This video is brought to you by Raycon Everyday Earbuds. Stick around to learn more about them, as well as a special offer they're making available through my channel. Exoprimal. This is a weird one. So when we think Capcom and dinosaurs, we typically think Dino Crisis. And for the love of God, Capcom, now that Resident Evil 4 Remake is done, please get to work on a Dino Crisis remake. We don't need 5 or 6 remakes, we need Dino Crisis. Please and thank you. Anyway, Capcom and dinosaurs is a love affair that goes way back, and it continues here in 2023, but in a very different form. This is not a survival horror game. This is in fact a PVEVP third-person shooter starring futuristic exosuits and dinosaurs that rain down from the heavens like a literal weather event. For real, this game actually has weather reporters whose job it is to predict the next dino shower. I know it feels like we're moving through things pretty fast at this point, and that's kind of how it feels to play Exoprimal. 1 minute you're in character creation, and the next minute you're fighting a swarm of raptors while a triceratops thrashes about. Let me tell you, I have played about 10 hours of this game right now across 2 different beta tests. The first one was back in August of last year, and the most recent one was last week. The footage that you're seeing here was all recorded by me across those 2 tests. I do expect some stuff has changed since last year, but I reviewed that old footage again, and it all looks very similar to what I experienced in the most recent beta, so I think it's still good to use now. There was only one game mode available during these closed tests called Dino Survival, which is the main game mode, but you get the impression that there's going to be at least a few other game modes, including a campaign story mode, but we know very little about that at this point. So before we get into the weeds, let's answer the most pressing question first, namely, is this good? The answer to that is yes. I'm very confident that this is a good game on more than a few fronts. It's quite funny in that it's not taking the whole dino rain thing at all seriously, and it clearly seems to be skewering capitalism and corporatism in its news reports and faux advertisements. Visually, it looks nice and runs well. There's a wide and varied roster of exosuits who all bring something unique to the fight. The dinosaurs are fun to square off against, and the larger ones are clearly leveraging AI and animations from the Monster Hunter series. So yeah, the game is overall just a good time. However, there are a few red flags I'm already seeing. The PvP is the big one, because yes, this is a PvP game, something I was legitimately surprised to learn when I played it, because this just looked like a PvE game to me. But no, this is absolutely a PvP game, and that itself is going to drive away quite a few folks. Even more will step off as Capcom goes through the necessary months and months long process of balancing out classes, map objectives, map designs, etc., which already seem to be quite unbalanced based on just these beta tests alone. As someone that's played his fair share of Gambit, Destiny's PvEVP mode, I've seen firsthand how hard it is to get this stuff right, and Exoprimal does not feel anywhere close to right just yet. And that's setting aside the asking price for this one. Basically a full price game when it's multiplayer focused. This is arriving on Game Pass, and that will absolutely help. But yeah, this is still a box product when it has a lot of free to play energy. Competitive experiences are less than a dime a dozen these days. They are literally free, and any game hoping to buck that trend better have a really good reason to ask people to slap down that 50 or 60 bucks. I'm seeing some cool stuff here in Exoprimal. I like it, I want to play more of it, but I do expect that asking price may be a bit too rich for most people. Exoprimal begins with its tongue firmly in cheek, a corporate propaganda reel rolls, showing us a world under threat from dinosaurs, but luckily there's one company brave enough to make a profit on that. The company provides exosuits to pilots, and it's their job to fight back the teeming dino hordes, generating valuable combat data for the Leviathan AI as they do so. Leviathan is clearly not just a helpful Siri-esque companion, by the way, that seems to be much closer to Skynet if it could talk. My story begins as a starry-eyed recruit. There's a character creation tool here, but nothing to write home about. Very basic stuff just to get you in there. I mean, most of the time you're actually wearing a full body exosuit anyway, so your character's appearance doesn't seem to matter all that much, unless of course we see a lot more of them in the story mode, but we don't know yet. After character creation, we're straight into the brief tutorial. Exoprimal's exosuits immediately feel very intuitive. You move smoothly, you can sprint and jump. Each exosuit has their own weapon type, like a minigun or an assault rifle, cluster grenades, etc. They also have their own abilities that tie to their archetype, of which there are 3. There's your damage dealers, including up-close melee fighters, mid-range assault or a long-range sniper. There's tanks, including a Reinhardt-style shield bro or a Zarya-style minigun wielder. And finally, there are also support classes, such as a dedicated heal bro, or one that's focused on debuffing targets, or one that's focused on buffing teammates, etc. It's very Overwatch, but that's just the shorthand that we might use due to Overwatch's popularity. You might say it's MOBA-esque, you might say it's Team Fortress-esque, but Overwatch is the easiest reference, and yes, it feels very Overwatch. So there are 10 classes available at launch, and I gotta say that one of the best parts of this package is how unique these classes feel. The way each of them meet their archetype objective is wholly distinct from every other exosuit on the roster, so you really do have 10 playstyles to sink your teeth into that are all really functional, really fun, and bring something unique to the table. However, I must say I wasn't really feeling any depth to the character classes. The action is, I'm gonna say, a little spammy. There are a lot of dinosaurs coming at you, and most of the time you are just indiscriminately spamming your abilities to maximize your throughput, and it gets the job done. If the game were to suddenly get harder with more dinosaurs or higher level dinosaurs, I don't see a lot in the exosuit kits that would give you more agency to meet that increased challenge. Obviously, a lot of it will come down to team synergy, utilizing different buffs and debuffs in a coordinated fashion, but even then, I don't know, I can't quite see the skill ceiling yet. Maybe that comes later as I spend more time with the game, but I really do feel like I had the measure of each exosuit after spending just a few minutes with it. Incidentally, the game feels really good actually. One of the things that made me want to keep playing was just how smooth it felt. You move briskly, weapon feedback is satisfying, traversal like the jump and the dodge are snappy. It's a very responsive game, and that becomes super important in the PvP side of things, since outplaying your opponent very much comes down to movement. It also looks really good. The exo designs are very shiny and look cool. Environment detail is pretty low, but that gives the RE engine the headroom it needs to render dozens and dozens of dinosaurs on screen at once, and it's impressive to see them pour through spaces, filling up every inch of the screen like some dino tsunami. There's also some nice spectacle at times, like at the back end of this mission we were told to brace ourselves for a really, really big dino attack, and yeah, it did not disappoint. So, those are the fundamentals of the game, the setup, the exosuits, the combat, the visuals, etc. Let's talk about what all this is put towards, the PvE and the PvP. We'll start with the PvE first. So each mission begins here at the pre-lobby. It's interesting to note that in this game mode, you are not actually fighting naturally occurring dinosaurs, but rather dinosaurs spawned in by Leviathan as it seeks to hoover up as much combat data as possible for what we can only assume are nefarious reasons. So this is the simulation loading screen to speak, and it's here that you'll select your exosuit. There are no means of specifying a role type when you queue in, so it's kind of a free-for-all, and if all of your teammates want to be tanks, then I guess that's how it's going to be unless someone blinks first and switches off. You can immediately see how this will get a little frustrating for players interested in actually doing well as a team, so hopefully the full game ships with some sort of role select, or we get one soon after launch. Important to note that this decision to choose one exosuit or another is not permanent. You can actually swap between suits on the fly at any time. You don't need to have died or anything, you just press a button and boom, you're in a new suit. That is absolutely crucial for A, proper team balancing, and B, responding to changing circumstances. Certain dinosaur types are more vulnerable to certain exosuits, such as the really small dinosaurs being easy fodder for the assault type, but basically impossible to kill if you're on the sniper. Similarly, bigger enemy types are all but immune to the Grenadier's attacks, but they'll take a hell of a lot of damage if you dome them with a sniper rifle. Of course, PvP is another consideration here, as certain group compositions may be susceptible to a certain counter, and switching exosuits might be just what's needed to break their line. This is, I think, where a lot of the depth in Exoprimal will come through. I don't think it's about the classes being particularly deep, but class composition really matters, and dynamically switching between exosuits based on the situation is what's going to separate good players from bad. Across the two playtests I did, there were a few different objective types being thrown at me. The first was a payload push, where yeah, you basically stand on the thing and it moves and you fight off dinosaurs trying to damage it. And yeah, it's Overwatch, it's Team Fortress 2, except instead of fighting enemy players, you are fighting dinosaurs. However, you do end up fighting other players at the end. However, we'll talk about that in the PvP block. The other objective type we did was a staged ad clear thing. Each team would drop onto a separate but identical map, and we were sent to separate but identical locations via a waypoint. The AI would spawn stuff in and we'd have to kill it as quickly as possible. When we did that, we would then be led to the next section of the map and new stuff would spawn in. Rinse and repeat for around 6 phases. You can actually see the ghosts of the opposing team as you're doing this as well, by the way. They'll appear as red outlines and you can see their location both immediately before and after a phase begins, and Leviathan often will give you an update at the end of each phase to let you know if you're accomplishing objectives faster or slower than the enemy team. It actually does ratchet up the urgency when you hear you're behind, so yeah, it's a nice touch. If one team falls too far behind, the AI will spawn in what's called a Dominator, which is literally a T-Rex that you get to control in the enemy's instance. So you're out there just mauling them in an attempt to slow them down. It's hella fun, but it's also very imbalanced in that the T-Rex just shreks everything and there isn't a whole lot the opposing team can do about it. In this way, the Dominator is kind of like a blue shell in Mario Kart. It helps keep things fun and competitive, but it also punishes you for doing well early, which isn't what you want in a truly competitive experience. So at this point, I'd say that all this stuff really works, and had the game just been this, it would have been a much safer product for Capcom to put out. It would have essentially been a co-op PvE shooter with some very light competitive elements, and I think a lot of people would have been happy with that because the baseline PvE experience is fun. Probably doesn't have enough legs to last into the longer term, but I can see this being a good time with friends for 10 to 20 hours while we all unlock new upgrades, tackle harder difficulties, progress through a story mode, etc. But Capcom did not take the easy route. They chose the much harder route of making this a truly competitive PvP experience, and that's where things start to get a little more funky.
Thanks, bud.
So whether you're pushing a payload or clearing dinosaurs or whatever else, eventually you will be spirited from your current map to a new map where the final showdown will take place. The earlier you get there, the better, as you can begin work on the final objective. If the other team is still stuck on the previous map, clearing out the original objectives, then woe to them. This obviously gives you a big incentive to get through your initial objectives as quickly as possible. But yeah, eventually you'll arrive on this new map, and it must be said that it doesn't always end in a PvP showdown. One objective was a co-op boss battle where the two teams would work together to bring down a big-ass Tyrannosaurus Rex. This boss had mechanics and phases and tons of health, and it was really epic. To be honest, I actually really like this. A lot of the time though, the final showdown is some sort of PvP encounter. Both teams are now placed on the same map and must race to complete an objective, fully able to harass and kill the other team while they're doing it. So for example, the payload mission. Before you were each pushing a payload on a separate map, now you're both pushing a payload on the same map, and the first to push to the center wins. You're always going to want someone on the payload to move it forward, but you're probably also going to want some of your more mobile damage dealers up front to flank, harass the enemy, drop a few of them if they can, and then retreat back for some heals. I like this a lot, in fact. This map we were on was basically symmetrical. There was a lot of space to pursue different playstyles. It worked well, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed the PvP side of this game. There's another map mode where we're in an aircraft hangar and we need to collect batteries or energy cells that appear intermittently. It's a real free-for-all since dinosaurs are still spawning in, and it's a fairly small space for two teams to be duking it out, which to be honest is fine. The problem is that we were eventually just dumpstering the other team, pushing them back to spawn and then spawn camping them as they reappeared one after another. There really wasn't anything they could do about it. That is some pretty basic PvP map design 101 stuff that Exoprimal wasn't getting right, and it doesn't bode well for the future. The other PvP game mode we did was Hammer Time. To be honest, I don't know what it's called, I just called it that. Teams spawn at either ends of the same map and are given a hammer which must be charged by killing dinosaurs. When it's fully charged, you can then activate it on a barrier which allows you to progress through to the next zone. You do this one more time, at which point you are now in the final zone, and this is where you're able to confront the enemy team. You'll both be shooting dinosaurs trying to charge your hammer while also harassing each other. The first to charge the hammer and ring the bell at the center of the map wins. Cool concept, except that the map was not symmetrical at all, and it gave the enemy team a huge advantage. We essentially spawned in at a location where the only way back to the objective was this massive wide open lane, and the enemy team spawned behind this fortification thing where their sniper could just chill up on the second level, peeking out from behind cover to pop us off while we all made an approach. It was infuriating, and we ended up losing this round despite going in with a commanding lead because this sniper was just so dug in and there was nothing we could do about it. These are the things that I encountered in just my brief time with the game, and they are completely separate from all the class balance issues that are sure to emerge as metas are established, maps are better understood, and objective strategies worked out. Players are always going to find a way to break a PvP game really fast, and given that I'm already seeing some foundational stuff that isn't working here, it leads me to suspect that there's probably myriad other issues just waiting to be uncovered. We haven't even started to think about the complicated world of matchmaking, team stacks, and ranking. Is there going to be skill-based matchmaking, or is it connection-based? Is it going to have a ranked mode? Are solo players going to be matched up against stacked teams? Can I rejoin a game if I get booted, etc, etc? These may seem like nitpicky things, but this is a PvP game. This is the stuff that your game lives and dies on. The majority of maps end in a competitive experience, but you can't guarantee a well-balanced and technically sound playing field, and your game is going nowhere fast. Making a good PvP game is really hard, and let's not forget that the only competitive shooters that Capcom have put out are those god-awful Resident Evil spin-offs, and we all know how they went. They obviously have a lot of learning from their Street Fighter series, but that is a very different type of competitive experience. I expect that both Capcom and Exoprimal will have a long journey ahead of them in this post-launch phase, as they try to mend all the leaks that players will inevitably punch into this game's PvP hole. And while it's nice to imagine that players are up for that journey, it's a really competitive market out there, especially when you're charging $50 or more. If you would ask me right now whether or not Exoprimal will be fun at launch, I will immediately say yes. If you were to ask me if it will do well on Game Pass and ride high for a few days as people have a laugh at dinosaurs falling from the sky, I would say hell yes. But if you were to ask me if people would front the asking price for this one, I'd probably say no. And if you were to ask me if players are likely to stick around for the longer term, I'd probably wince a little and say, it's really hard to say. I mean, a technical test only shows a very small slice of a game. One game mode where we know there will be more, nothing about the story and characters which have been teased in other trailers, no real details about the game's progression model, which may include item upgrades as well as cosmetics, so there could be a lot more here that just hasn't shown itself yet, and maybe that's the stuff that really brings this whole package together and makes it a compelling value proposition in what is an extremely competitive online shooter market. It's also possible that many of the PvP concerns I have are unwarranted, and that the game is actually more tightly balanced than I give it credit for, and I am just bad. That is totally possible, in which case Exoprimal comes out of the gate with a lot more momentum than I would have expected. But I bet there are a bunch of you watching this video who are stunned to learn that this has a PvP component, because I was stunned when I learned that, and I know a lot of people just aren't up for that sort of experience. This really looks like a co-op PvE shooter, and I think it would have had a broader appeal had it been only that. But the hybrid PVEVP model, while ambitious, is also divisive and will likely push away many players not interested in that sort of thing. Then there's those people who might be interested in it but don't want to pay $50. I mean, not everyone has an Xbox or a PC, not everyone has Game Pass. Capcom is asking a pretty hefty price for a product that by contemporary standards is often put in the free-to-play bucket. And had this been free-to-play, I feel like it would have had a much better chance of cutting through some of the resistance that this title will likely face. Finally, there's all the PvP balancing stuff I alluded to earlier. Hopefully I'm wrong about all of it, but I don't think I am. And it's a big thing to ask audiences to stick around while you learn how to properly balance and support a PvP game. Some of them might, a lot of them won't, so I hope Capcom have the stomach for what I expect would be a fair amount of audience churn. Having said all of that, I would love it if this popped off, because it is fun, it's ridiculous, and it's unique. I mean, yeah, we liken it to Overwatch and Team Fortress or Gambit, but there isn't anything out there quite like this. This is its own unique thing that may find an audience keen to return to it. And if that happens, then that's awesome, because much respect to any publisher willing to take a chance on a new IP and a new gameplay format. It's a rare thing to see a AAA publisher make a big, long odds bet like this. And so, yeah, I hope that it pays off. But I guess we'll find out when Exoprimal launches on July 14th for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, and of course, day one on Game Pass. For many years now, I have been using Raycon wireless earbuds. They reached out to me a long time ago and sent me a pair, and since then, they've just been a part of my everyday routine. Going for a walk, heading to the shops, going to the gym, whatever. When I leave the house, it's wallet, keys, Raycons. Because Raycons get the job done at a really reasonable price. They actually start at half the price of premium audio brands without having to compromise on features or quality. For example, they have earbud tap functions allowing you to pause or skip songs without having to touch your phone. Their custom gel tips create a snug, comfortable, noise isolating fit, and Raycons actually stay in my ear. That's one of the biggest reasons I use them actually. I've tried other earbuds and the shape of my ear means that they just fall out, but Raycons stay in no matter what I'm doing. Plus, they sound great and the carry case is nice and small, so it fits really nicely in your pocket. It's no wonder then that Raycon's everyday earbuds have over 50,000 5-star reviews. Raycons offer premium audio and convenience at a very reasonable price, perfect for yourself or maybe as a gift, since everyone needs a pair of earbuds, right? If you're ready to buy something small that'll make a big impact, then click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/skillup to get 15% off your Raycon purchase. Thanks Raycon for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.